Welcome, everyone. I'm going to get us started now. Today, we are discussing about monetizing Meetup, specifically fundraising with Pledge, which is something that rolled out last year in the US. I'll be going over our guidelines. Okay, event guidelines. This event will be recorded. You will not be appearing in the video. Just for courtesy, we've muted everyone's audio just to make sure that our panelists are easily heard. If you have any questions, please submit them in the Q&A feature at the bottom of your screen. And then closed captioning is available for anyone who needs it. To turn it on, click on the live transcript icon at the bottom of your screen and select your preference. All right, I'll be introducing our panelists, and then we will have most of the next hour, 40 minutes, covered in discussions, and about 15 minutes for questions and answers by you. So as we go through, feel free to put your question in the Q&A, and we will do our best to answer as many as possible. All right. I am Ashley DiGianelli. I'm a senior product manager at Meetup, and today I'm joined by some of our amazing organizers, Darcy Varney Kitching, Sarah Andrews, and Gregory Garoppolo, for a discussion on how they've been using Meetup's fundraising tool to receive voluntary donations from group members. Before we get to them sharing advice, I want to share a little bit about them. Darcy is an urban planner, researcher, and community connector. She designs and leads weekly local walking events with her Boulder Ramblers group, conducts mixed methods and community engaged research projects, and writes and speaks about active transportation in child-friendly cities. Darcy's trail guide, The Best Urban Hikes of Boulder, was published by the Colorado Mountain Club Press in 2020. Welcome, Darcy. Sarah Andrews is an organizer of AVL Digital Nomads, a meetup group for remote workers in the Asheville, North Carolina area. Having moved around the US quite a lot as a digital nomad herself, she's always turned to Meetup to find instant community wherever she's landed. While still embracing the digital work life at this point, she's happy to have called Asheville home for a couple of years and currently has no plans to move on. And Gregory Garoppolo is a late in life diagnosed autistic person with 7 years of experience running peer support groups for autistic people. He has a master's degrees in integrative medicine research and clinical training in neuropathic medicine, with experience working in immigrant, transgender, low income, and integrative mental health clinics. He has a deep understanding of the multidimensional struggles of neurodivergent people face in their daily lives and the immense need to improve support for his community. Welcome. Okay. I'm going to ask that everyone share a little bit about your groups. I'll start with Darcy.
Hi, everyone. So my group, the Boulder Ramblers here in Boulder, Colorado, actually started as part of a larger network of groups that were facilitated by an organization called Walk to Connect. So that organization was based in Denver, and there were several groups as part of our sort of meetup network. And the Boulder Ramblers, like the other groups, became its own independent thing when Walk to Connect kind of dissolved as an organization. And so the Boulder Ramblers have been going strong for 8 years now. This is our 8th year doing urban hikes. There are a lot of hiking groups here in Boulder, but we kind of stay out of the mountains and into the city. I'm a city explorer myself, so we really have a lot of fun just exploring where we live and learning how paths and trails and beautiful natural spaces connect to the needs of our everyday lives.
Amazing. 8 years is quite a long time to be running a meetup group. So congratulations on that.
Thank you.
Sarah, would you like to go next?
Sure. Yeah, that's amazing, Darcy. 8 years, that's incredible. I am an organizer for AVL Digital Nomads here in Asheville area. And we are a group that serves or gives a place to connect for people who work remotely, which is a huge thing for a lot of us now. You know, there are many, many remote workers out there who feel really isolated when they're working at home all day. And so we just provide social events for people to come and connect. And we've been around for a little over 1.5 years at this point. And I think we are about 1,350 people. So we've grown really quickly. And I think our last big event was like, 170 people coming out to just connect and mingle and have fun. And it's amazing to see people making really meaningful connections in lots of different ways, whether it's work-wise or friendships or romances. I met my partner through one of these meetups too. So, I mean, all kinds of different connections are being made, and it's really satisfying.
Well, as a meetupper, we love hearing about those special connections that do occur. Gregory?
Thanks, Ashley. Yeah, so I run peer support group for autistic adults. We didn't start out in Meetup. We kind of moved to Meetup because of the pandemic, and a little bit before that, just trying to reach a few more people, essentially. And kind of the point of what we do is create a safe space where we can gather and kind of talk about how we fit in the world and what that looks like, and kind of grow and learn from that. And really, more importantly, kind of fight this social isolation is a big problem, essentially, by getting together and sharing that how we face the world together. So I now talk to people from other countries instead of just here in Portland, Oregon, because of how Meetup and all these things work now. Is kind of how everything's changed and really done things in it. And it's surprising how much we all have in common, despite being very far away from each other.
Amazing. Gregory, I'm gonna start with you. How long have you been using Pledge, and why did you first decide to use it?
Yeah, so my community I work with, there's a lot of problems like with employment. So there's not really much money, and there's not really any sort of system for like Medicaid or something to pay into it, which is our low income health insurance system if people are not from this country. So I don't really feel it's ethical to be asking for people who don't really have anything to pay for something. So when we got forced online, there was no longer the literal hat being passed around asking people to chip in to pay for things. And there just kind of was just a few of us that were just trying to fill in all the gaps. Meanwhile, like I said before, all these people from like other countries started showing up, as well as all around, not that many from other countries, like 4 or 5 probably. But yeah, all the additional people started showing up, and there's no way to ask for money without it being kind of like a requirement. So then Pledge showed up, and I was able to just reiterate what we were doing and how things changed, and ask for money again. And my members were happy to step up and help out to make things more sustainable and a little easier to do.
Fantastic. Darcy?
Yeah, so I turned on the Pledge feature on our Meetup group when it appeared in my inbox last summer. So it was really kind of the middle of last summer, and the opportunity arose. And one thing I was kind of grappling with as we transitioned from part of Walk to Connect to our own independent group was now the cost of running our Meetup group was kind of on me and on the leaders in our group. And I'm really the kind of overarching coordinator. We have a few other organizers in our group, but I'm kind of overseeing the operations as they were. So when the Pledge opportunity came in, I thought, well, this might be a good way to ask people to help offset those costs. It's about $230 a year for the subscription. So I just kind of put the word out there, and I thought that making it voluntary was really important to me, because we had been asking, when we were part of Walk to Connect, we had been asking people to join as members that organization, which would then help offset the cost of not only our multiple Meetup groups, but a lot of other costs. And I never wanted to make, being part of our group come with a mandatory kind of dues element. So that's why I turned it on. I thought I'll just put it out there and see what happens.
Amazing. Sarah?
Yeah, very similar. It just pops up on our radar at some point. I think it was September that we implemented it. And the founder of our group, Rick, just saw it and he's like, hey, let's try this out. So, it couldn't hurt. At that point, we too were just sort of self-funding everything. Not that there was really much to pay for other than the meetup fees. And we do name tags. So there's like that minimal cost. But up until then, for a year or more, we had been paying for all of that ourselves. And so we figured, well, why not? Let's just see what happens. And we put it up there. And luckily, it's not brought in a ton of money, but it's been helpful for little costs here and there. And it's allowed us to do a little bit more sometimes, and we'll see where it goes from here.
Awesome. Sarah, I'm going to stick with you for a second. What form of communication did you use to introduce Pledge to your group? And if you remember, how did your members initially react to seeing, the Pledge fundraising on your group?
Yeah, when we did implement it, I know we sent out an email to just let everybody in the group know that it was there, but it was very lightweight, and I think it probably included something else in the email too, not like solely focused on like, hey, give us money. It was more like, hey, we're trying out this thing. You may not know that we have very minimal costs, but we've been paying for it ourselves so far, and we're happy to do that, but would love if you could help out if you can. I think that's been really important, just saying we don't want to require, like, we don't ever want to get to a place where we're requiring dues. If you feel called to help out, that would be great. In any amount, it's all welcome. And so we sent out an email initially, and since then, we once in a while will mention it at one of our big events per month. And what we find is actually when we do bring it up, then we'll get some donations. And that's typically the pattern. So we're also learning like, hey, we should bring it up more often, not like, annoyingly so, but, it's a pattern and it's reliable at this point. So why not?
That's very true. We've noticed on the product team that most of the donations come in after an event. For most of our organizers, that seems to be a behavior that our members have adopted.
Mm-hmm.
Darcy, how about you?
Yeah, like Sarah, we send out an email to our entire group. We actually have almost 2,200 members. So it's like 2,193 or something like that. And I sent out an email to everyone just saying, hey, there's this new feature. And I turned on the button. So the button, is on every event page. And I also listed it on the, there's a kind of a chat feature on the front page of our meetup. And so I put it there in the discussion, just saying, here's an opportunity. We're, looking to offset our costs. And I don't really bring it up at events or anything. I just kind of put it there and sent out this message and made it known that this was a thing. And I was absolutely amazed. And I think it kind of goes to that principle of, if you ask, if you make something available to people, they will respond. So people, I think, naturally want to help when there's something organized by volunteers and they're appreciating it and getting value out of it. People are kind of moved to help out in whatever way they can. So I said we have about 2,200 members. We have about 30 to 50 people who kind of come on our walks on a routine basis. And that's really the group from whom I noticed donations coming in. So the people who are routinely showing up on our walks and hikes, the people with whom I have a personal connection. So those are the sort of patterns that I've seen so far.
Awesome. Gregory?
I took a similar approach. I basically told the story I did before to my members, remind them where we came from, where we are now, and then ask them for money in the monthly reminder email. But what I was able to do in addition to that is, because like I said, the group that I've been running has been around since 1998. I've been doing it for, it'll be 8 years sometime this year. So I have an email listserv for that as well. And because Pledge doesn't actually require you to be signed up for Meetup, I can ask all them as well. And so one of the differential experiences I have is I have people that I've actually never met that have sent money, which is kind of weird. But it's a little bit different how some things can work. And so that's really one of the things that I'll tie there that people are saying is like giving people this information in different ways help. I work with people that have communication differences, and people can totally want to give you money, but if you don't tell them at the right time in the right context, then you're not going to get it from them as much as they want to give it to you. So, you know, I would actually suggest maybe you should ask during your meeting. I should probably ask during my meetings too, is one of the things that is it just feels funny asking people for money, but it's the only way you're going to get it.
Awesome. You've all kind of spoken to this next question that I had, which was, how do you remind your members about it? You've all sort of shared that already. So to give us more time to talk about other things.
Actually, can I say one more thing on the point that Greg just brought up?
Yeah, please.
The awkwardness of asking for money. I imagine for a lot of people, that's sort of like the barrier to even implementing this in the first place. And I don't know if you were already going to go this direction, but I feel like, I don't know, the way that we put it out at meetings and even in emails too, it's just very like casual. I don't know if I could give a tip or whatever in terms of like how to do that. We usually couch it within some other stuff, you know, like, hey, this is going on and everything. And just a reminder, like we also have this available if you feel called to give, it helps us with blah, blah, blah. And even when, you know, when we're saying that at a meeting too, like, hey, remember we have this next event coming up and it's so great to have all you here. We love seeing you all and blah, blah, blah. And, you know, and you can couch it within something else you're already saying. It doesn't have to be like, okay, now I'm going to ask for money. You know? Can just be very light. Just a reminder.
Absolutely.
That's great. Darcy, I feel like you shared that the members that you seem to get the most donations from are sort of like your group's regulars. So I'd love for you to share a little bit about how do you go about building those more personal connections with people and getting people to, I know this is something organizers struggle with, getting the same people to show up to your events. Is there anything, you know, that you do that sort of helps facilitate that?
Yeah, that's a great question. Our group is a really close-knit group. You know, like I said, we have a lot of members on our page, but we have a core group of people who routinely, you know, weekly are showing up. And I think it's the continuity of our group. It's the fact that we've been going now for almost 8 years. And we've built really strong relationships among our group members. So Sarah mentioned there have been, you know, friendships and partnerships developed out of her group. It's the same with the Boulder Ramblers. We've seen amazing connections develop. Some people who join our group are new to the Boulder area. They make friends. They go off and do their own hikes and have fun together. We had a pair of friends who met in Boulder Ramblers and then went and hiked the Camino de Santiago in Spain together, you know. So there are all kinds of amazing relationships that develop just out of showing up together. And what I have heard from my group members, especially those who have chosen to donate with Pledge, is they value those connections so deeply. And it's so meaningful to them to have a venue at which they can just show up, have fun together, get some exercise. And they're so grateful to me for facilitating that they're happy to help support the group. And we have actually brought in at this point much more than I need for the annual cost of the meetup. And so I'm kind of setting those funds aside. I've mentioned that we'll do some other things with them, but it's really amazing how generous people get when you create something of value that they can belong to. I really think it comes back to the sense of belonging. And I know that that's a little abstract, but what I've heard repeatedly is people are grateful to me for organizing something for them. And that's so meaningful to them that they're willing to give some money to help sustain it.
Amazing. Sarah, do you have anything to add there for your?
Well, you know, we haven't been around as long as Darcy's group, but I will say, two things come to mind, actually. One is we're exploring now, like, how do we create more, connected, ongoing, meaningful relationships within a really quickly growing group. I would say, every event we have, at least the bigger ones, like half or more of the people who show up are new. So it's, we do have a core group forming, but at the same time, there's a lot of new people coming in all the time. And it's hard to like tell how many are staying or how much turn there is at this point. But at every event, whether it's big or small, we do the name tags. We make sure that we're welcoming everybody who comes in to put a name tag on, like just, taking at least a second to connect with everybody who's there. That's very important to us, because I do think that goes a long way, especially at this point where like sometimes the events are really big and like maybe you're an introvert and you walk in, you're like, oh my God, like how am I going to connect with anybody? Just having at least like that initial point of connection. And like sometimes if I can tell that they're a little shy, I'll even like, connect them with somebody else who's been there longer term. And all of that has an impact, then they can feed more easily into making other connections, and then they feel more like they belong and that they're welcome there. That all matters.
Can I just add to that a little bit? Sarah, I really appreciate that you spoke to building those connections specifically, because that's another thing I think I neglected to say is that because we came from this walk to connect background, we still uphold those principles, which is always starting our walks or hikes in a circle. We get to know everybody. Everybody says, their name and where they're from, and something I add. I have some kind of a connection question I ask every week. And we really get to know each other, and I try to mix it up and make sure that people are interacting with each other. And so that's, I think, how these friendships and bonds are forming. And that's what creates the excitement about showing up every week.
That's great. Gregory?
Yeah, I would have to agree mostly with what's already been being said. It's about connection and creating a sense of community. And like I was saying before, a lot of that comes in that is a sense of safety and, introducing each other, plus people know who's present. And so that matters. And sometimes that gets skipped over, and some groups are glossed over when new members show up. And so they feel left out. They don't really know who's present. If you're doing something, telling people why, it makes a big difference. I do a bunch of things that throw people off because I work with a bunch of neurodivergent people who have a lot of trauma history, and I'm trying to give people access to a community, not put up barriers for them to join a community or hurdles to jump over and all sorts of other things. So, it can seem strange to have somebody who's not on camera, has a weird picture for who they are as their little thing. Their name might not even be a name that you would think is actual name, and they will only type. But that's how they get access to the group. And letting people know why you're doing something like that lets them know that you are concerned with overall safety and you're trying to create connection and allow space for that. And then people are happy to support you because really that's what most people want, is community and safety and feeling like they belong.
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
Gregory, I'd love to know what cost has Pledge helped you offset, and is there anything that you've been able to pay for that maybe you couldn't consider previously without the support of your members?
Yeah, so we use Meetup, which has fees associated with. We also use Zoom, and there's some email-based software that we use to help manage things. We have a website, and basically the pledge funds go to offsetting all these things, as well as being allowed to compensate myself for some time, because a lot goes into this. In particular, I work with a group that tends to fall through cracks a lot. So they just come to me in desperation asking for things. And again, talking about the safety part of things, if somebody's reaching out to me in desperation, doesn't matter that I'm not a social worker, I run a peer support group. There's no good reason I should have extra services. I operate off donations, but not responding to such a thing can do more harm. So I have to respond, which means I have to be engaged because I'm the one who decided to run the group. And so my time is actually worth something. And this is one way that I can allow that to be kind of equitably dispersed throughout the group. It's still, not enough to cover all of what I do, and I have other things in the works for that, but it allows a way for my members to try with limited resources they tend to have to support me. And people feel good about supporting something they derive value from, and I am absolutely happy to get a $2 payment, donation from somebody who that's what they could afford to do and wanted to show appreciation.
Excellent. Sarah, would you like to share what you've been able to use Pledge to cover for from the donations you've received?
Yeah, sure. So like I said, we just sort of tried it out, not knowing what to expect. And that was in September. And we got a bit of an influx all of a sudden, which of course allows us to pay for the administrative kind of stuff that's already been discussed. But we had enough for our Friendsgiving event, which was like a first time thing for us. We had visions of like this grand potluck with lots of people and connection and all this stuff happening. And we had enough funds at that point to, buy all the utensils and plates and, and get some wine, like higher quality wine, and, do a little bit more for this event. Whereas like all of our past events up to that point had just been like, let's meet at this brewery where everybody's going to pay for their own drinks. And like, we don't have to pay for anything because we just didn't have any kind of budget. So it was really nice to be able to do a little something. And of course, it was still a potluck. So everybody, oh my gosh, we ended up with so much food. It was amazing. But it was nice to be able to take care of the things that kind of, created the structure for that to happen, and even like go a little bit beyond. And like, it's important to me to like be eco-friendly. So I got compostable plates and utensils and, cups and all that kind of stuff. And to have the funds to be able to do it well, that was really wonderful. Like I was so happy to be able to go out and do those things and know that it was being funded by our group,
Yeah, that's great. Darcy?
I really appreciate what both Gregory and Sarah have shared about, Gregory mentioned that some of the funds are helping to support his own time. And honestly, I'm grateful to our group members who have said that to me. I've said, oh, I'll put it in a swag fund, or I'll make sure that we get t-shirts or something, and people said, look, you put a lot of time into this, just keep it. So, I mean, I have plans for the funds over and above our meetup costs. And at the same time, it's so amazing and wonderful to know that people want to support me as well, because this is time. It's my investment in the group. I create I create maps for every single one of our walks and hikes. I put stuff out there. I create partnerships and get donations sometimes. And so it's really amazing to have a little bit of support for that work. But then also I've been able, so after we started collecting funds last year, I just had it in the back of my mind, like, oh, okay, now I have some freedom to get some things we might need. So we did a walk just before, toward the end of December, just before the holidays. And it was very, very cold on the day of this walk. And so I went out and I bought a bunch of hand and foot warmers, and I bought some snacks, and I just wanted to make sure people were comfortable and they would show up. And so I made it known that I had supplies. And this is kind of stuff I had done before with our group, but I kind of had I was in a different financial situation at that time. And now Meetup or the Pledge through Meetup has allowed me to just have that same kind of freedom to say, okay, I can supply things when we need it. So we've often done things like, a little potluck or something like Sarah has mentioned, but we haven't done that kind of thing for a while, following the pandemic. So I've just been, able to get some little supplies, some little snacks, some things that we need. And I'll just keep doing that because it's great. And people love to know that they're going to be cared for in that way on our events.
Awesome. Darcy, I'm going to start with you. I'm trying to make it equitable. Who speaks first? How has Pledged helped you as an organizer? Like, how has it helped your group? Aside from being able to buy them supplies.
Well, yeah. So what I just mentioned, I mean, it's given me, honestly, seeing how generous our group members have been has given me a boost. So I went back to grad school a couple of years ago. I'm finishing my PhD. I don't have a lot of time. I could have just stopped, right? I could have just said, I'm not going to do this anymore. I've got too much going on in my life. I have a son. Life is busy. But using Pledge, turning it on, giving people the opportunity to say, we care about this so much that we're going to make it easy for you. And we're going to make sure that, it's funded. That has just, it gives you faith, it gives you faith in your community and the knowledge that what you're doing is valuable. So that kind of boost just helps you stay connected as an organizer, I think, and it helps you want to keep being creative. So I keep creating new routes and new maps and putting stuff out there. And it's fun. I think that's how it's helped me. It's given me the sense that what I do is of value to my community. And that's why, and I already knew that, but having a little money attached to that is really nice.
Awesome. Gregory, how has Pledged helped you as an organizer and your group?
Well, it's basically allowed things to continue to operate, and for me to be able to put aside more time to do things, which makes everything run more smoothly. So, like I said, there will always be things to do. How much time I can afford to set aside is partially dependent upon, like, is it free work or not? And so with it not being that changes a lot. So I can be a lot more consistent, which translates into people having better access to my group. It also does provide a good way to be able to track funds over time, the way it presents all the information, which I'm hoping as longer I'm using it, I can use to kind of like plan ahead to kind of have an idea of like what to expect and such, which would have been a lot of manual entry and input previously to figure out.
Great. Sarah?
Yeah, it's interesting to think about this question. Aside from the obvious, it allows you to do more things. I will say for myself, like, as I think about this, it's like, it is not that we're bringing in a ton of funds, but just the fact that it's happening. And aside from that, we're also like bringing in more volunteers to help with the organizing. It's like shifting me from like my old pattern that burns me out eventually, where like I do it all myself. And like, I spend my own money and like, because I want this to really work. But ultimately, if you're taking it all on yourself, and I've done it solo in the past, you do like eventually just like, you feel a little like deflated or like just burned out eventually. And then it doesn't serve the group, obviously, because you just want to stop. So I think even just opening it up to allow others to contribute and be part of it is, it's rejuvenating for you as an organizer, because that there are other people supporting this and, doing their part to continue to make it happen. And, monetarily, that's one way of doing it, but also bringing in other organizers is another way. There's lots of different, parts of that, but it's a different experience than I've had in the past where like I might have led something and just kind of taking care of all of it on my own. And it's more sustainable, I think.
That's awesome. Sarah, I'll stick with you for this next question, which is, has enabling Pledged allowed you to put on any like special events for your members, or anything that's been unique that you wouldn't have considered before?
Yeah, well, I mean, I already said the Friendsgiving thing. That was kind of the one instance so far that we've been able to, spend more funds on. Otherwise, well, we are in the process of building a website. Some of it's going to go toward that. We're kind of growing out like our different ways of communicating with people. So some of it will enable that. I just bought more labels this morning, which is great. But we do have an anniversary event coming up in the summer that I'm sure, we'll want to do kind of a bigger thing with, and we'll be spending some funds on that. Last year, we had this anniversary event before we had Pledge, and it was still a great party and everything, but we gave out fun little prizes and everything. And back then, it was all self-funded. We did it ourselves, and it wasn't like any big deal, but it will be a different experience this time, knowing, okay, here's our budget and like, what do we get to do with that? And like, knowing that it was, a group effort and not just like on the organizers. It's sort of a weird dynamic after a while, I think, when like, it's just the organizers, like funding everything and leading everything. Like I don't know. It can lead to like kind of a divisiveness, I think, in the group where like there are the leaders and there's the group. And I feel like if you open it up to everybody contributing, it enables more cohesiveness.
That's great. Darcy, Gregory, anything that
Yeah.
comes to mind?
I would absolutely agree with that, opening it up to everyone's support really does create more community cohesiveness. Also, regarding the special event, so last year when we hit 2022 members, I put together a 22-kilometer ice cream crawl around Boulder, and it was really fun. We hit 10 ice cream stores, I forget how many, but people could join at any of the ice cream shops along the way and walk for however long they wanted. So it was sort of a, do as much as you want kind of thing. And this year, I'm going to pay for everyone's ice cream. I'm really excited. So yeah, so we'll do that in June, which will be our 8th anniversary. June 15th or so is our 8th anniversary. So we'll do another ice cream crawl, 23-kilometer ice cream crawl, and with maybe an extra shop, and I'll buy ice cream for everyone.
That's awesome. Gregory, did you have any events that came to mind? Or I know you said it allowed you to keep running your group, which is amazing. So many folks need connection.
Yeah, we were able to offer a different time because one of the problems when you have a really fixed time. So we were only operating once per month previously. And just inherently, you just pick a time, it's not gonna work for some people. No matter what time you pick, it's not gonna work. And so we were able to pick a very different time, and we get some different people at that group. But we're also currently kind of have it set out like, I'd like to tell members exactly what I'm using the money on, exactly what it goes towards. I'm going to say break down all the little expenses, this to meetup, that to the email thing, that's not necessary. That's just administrative cost. But, I let them know what's going to me and what's going to other things. So if we reach a certain goal, we'll have a big picnic type thing. But I also, if we're not getting close to it, I might just do a fundraiser and try and see if that feature can yield some sort of a different results. I saw that's kind of one of the new things going on. I haven't tried it out yet.
Yeah, awesome. It's hard to believe, but we are almost at the end of our discussion. So this will be our last question. What are some of the things you learned while setting up and using Pledge that you'd like other organizers to be aware of and learn from your experience? Darcy?
I mean, it's
Sorry to
so
put you on the
easy.
spot.
Well, I don't have a lot to share about that because it's so easy. Like I just turned it on and linked it to my bank account. It was really easy. I haven't had any particular issues with it, or the one thing that I think we can all discuss a little bit is when you have multiple organizers in your group, it is a little bit of a challenge for one person to be kind of taking in all the funds. And then the question is, what do you do with that? And how do you disperse it equitably? That's something that I haven't talked a lot about with my other organizers. I did host a kind of a little a gathering with my other organizers late last year. And we talked about, just what we do. But I haven't yet sort of done a payout to them, and I'm curious about how to do that. But yeah, for me, it's been really straightforward.
Great. Sarah?
Yeah, we had maybe a little bit more confusion on our end. And I mean, partly it's just because like Rick saw it one day and he's like, let's just try this out and just implement it. And we didn't really do a lot of talking beforehand about longer term vision for this or anything. And so I would just say, for anybody who is thinking about using it, maybe give a little bit of thought to like, do you have multiple organizers who want to have visibility into this? Because right now, what happened, and you would see this if you go in to set up an account with Pledge, you can choose to set it up as an individual, a nonprofit, or a business. Well, if you think about like a meetup group, a lot of people are like, oh, I don't fit into any of those. And so we didn't really know which one exactly to pick either. And so Rick just picked individual. And what has played out is that as an individual accountant pledge, you can't add anybody else to see what's going on in there. So really, he's the only one who has visibility into it right now, even though the funds are going into a bank account that he and I share, and we both have, access to. Just that, being able to see what's going on is really limited to just him. And so we might have to restructure things and, reset up things to address that down the line. But also just, giving some thought to and I don't want to give any advice. I don't even know what advice to give, but what do you do as a meetup group? Are you a nonprofit? Are you a business? You're figuring that out from the get-go so that you can set yourself up properly, with pledge if you're going to use it. And I would say the second thing is, it takes a minute to kind of wrap your head around if you haven't looked at it too carefully. In Meetup, there's the money section. As an organizer, you can see, but that's not where you're going to find the pledge stuff. You have to go into pledge to find those statistics or whatever it is that you're looking for.
Yeah, that's correct. Gregory, do you have anything to add about what you think would be helpful for other organizers to hear about pledge?
I would say it was pretty easy to set up as well. What was being talked about before is what most of what I've run into. I have also run into where you set your goals actually will matter. I did have feedback from members that they weren't sure, because if we reached the goal, what happened then? So some of them actually held back donations end of last year because we were kind of close to where the goal was set, which is kind of I don't know, I didn't anticipate that happening at all. So it'd be communicating why you're doing things. It really is kind of, I have to say over and over and over again, what you're doing, people get questioned all your motives and stuff. You tell them why you're doing it, and that's why they're gonna end up donating. And saying that and reminding them if that's there goes a long way. And just being consistent. I just structure my emails, and pledge is just like the last line item on all of my reminder emails. Here, you can donate to us. Once in a while, I update it with some fundraising based information, or change up the thank you type thing, stuff like that. I wrote up a report to let them know where the money would be going and has gone at the end of the year, and all that seems to work well. People just want it to be very easy for them.
Awesome. Before we jump into our Q&A, we have a few really excellent questions to cover together. I just want to call out that one of my colleagues will be sharing the links to our amazing panelists groups or social media, depending on what they've shared with us. So if you are interested in learning more about their groups or seeing how their groups are set up, you can take a look with the links that we are sharing in the chat now. Alrighty. For our first question in our Q&A, we have, what is the typical amount that people donate? Sarah?
Yeah, I mean, I can say, again, Rick is the one who actually gets to see all this stuff, but from discussing things with him, I think it tends to be about $20. But, we have sometimes like a $5 donation. Sometimes we have much more. I'm not going to I don't want to give too much because I don't want to divulge, individual contributions. But I would also like to point out that we do make an effort as much as possible. Sometimes you can't tell between the two platforms who's who, but if we can tell who it is, we send a thank you email, just because we want to make sure that those people feel valued. Of course, we value everybody, but it's really nice when people do that. And so we do make an effort to do that.
Yeah, same. I always try to acknowledge the donors. If I know them, I mean, it's not always easy to find an email, but most of the people who are donating I know, and so I can respond to them and thank them. And the average contribution for our group is probably between $20 and $40 as well.
Excellent.
I'd say I probably get more 10 to 20 on average. Is where we are. 20 is probably really the number I'd choose if I'd pick one, though.
Excellent. I have seen a number of questions that I will answer because it's product based, which is when will Pledge be available internationally? So Pledge is a partner of ours. They currently only offer this fundraising right now in the US, but I'm working very closely with them and have been for the last several months to see them roll it out internationally. So I'm hopeful that we will have a firmer timeline on that in the next few months to share and communicate with our international organizers, because I think it's a great tool to leverage and be able to use. All right, our next question from CB. I have 3 groups, Fun and Single in Cleveland, Cleveland Foodies, and Pearl Pixel Photography with a combined membership of 3,000. I'd be very interested in hearing how Pledge enhanced your experience as organizers and what are some of the ways Pledge have benefited your groups. Thank you, and it is so good that we have this opportunity to collaborate. I think each of you has sort of covered different ways that it's helped your group, but if anything is coming to mind that maybe you forgot to share earlier, let me know. Otherwise, I'm happy to recap some of what you shared.
Yeah, I like what I think we've talked about a little bit, but I would like to emphasize is that, especially for groups like the 3 that you just named, who sound like they're probably meeting in person, doing, concrete things together, having specific campaigns for particular things that you might need, so you might need, you might want to share some kind of special photography thing with people, or you might want to have an event at a restaurant or something. And so those kinds of campaigns, I think, could work really nicely. I haven't yet really gone that direction, but I can see the Boulder Ramblers going that direction, where we can say, okay, we're raising money now for this so that everybody can have lunch on this hike, or we want to get t-shirts, or we want to do whatever. And it's really the crowdfunding aspect of it, I think, is really exciting, because you can target a specific goal or a need for that group.
That's great.
Yeah, I totally agree with that, Darcy. And I mean, like, even just doing this webinar and having this conversation with everybody, so far we haven't done individual campaigns either. We just keep raising the bar, just to allow room for people to contribute. But I do think if people know what they're contributing to, and especially if you have multiple groups, I can see how for one group you're going to say, like, we're, putting money towards this, and another one's going to be different. I think people will be more compelled to donate to something if they know why, what exactly it's going to be spent on.
Excellent. Gregory, anything to add?
Yeah, I will say, particularly coming from I'm providing support services that kind of don't exist type world. I know some other people out there probably do some things in that realm as well. And also, you might be doing that even if that's not what you signed up for. It's really great to be able to have a way that people actually can give back, because in particular, going into the pandemic situation where there was no way of collecting money for a period of time, it's very easy to start to feel like you're just doing a bunch of stuff nobody cares about for free. And it is a very concrete way to allow people to go, no, you're not, we do care. And let you know that you're appreciated. And that matters a lot. Your mental health and sanity matter a lot.
Absolutely. I have a question from an anonymous organizer who says, I have a group with almost 3,000 people, and I am in the zone that Sarah and Gregory, you just described this too, doing it all. And despite having invited others to be event organizers, they haven't done so. So how do you encourage your members to sort of step up and maybe help out a little bit?
In our group, so we used to, through our Walk to Connect kind of parent organization, we held trainings for people who wanted to lead walks in our particular connection focused way. We're not doing that right now, but and so all of the organizers that we have currently kind of came out of that system where we had specific trainings and people were invited to kind of pick a frequency, a location, a type of walk or hike that they wanted to lead on a regular basis. And I mean, that worked well to get us to our current body of organizers. I have been thinking about that a lot, about how do we empower more people? It's not just about me, and I don't want the Boulder Ramblers to be about my personality and people, coming to walk with me. I want it to be about how do we really share these experiences in our community more broadly? And so I've been thinking about that a lot, about how to, outside of those kind of formal trainings, just helping people kind of envision themselves. When I see people really enjoying our walks and hikes, I might mention, hey, you can do this too. Our group is open to coordinators, organizers. If you have a regular place you'd like to take people and you've got the spirit, and I look for people who are interested in other people. And But I think it kind of does come down to the personality and the approachability of the core organizer as well, because that's the person who brings people in, who shares the ethos of what you're doing, and gets people excited about it, and then they can envision themselves doing that same thing. So I think it has to be, we can't be in that burnout space and attract other organizers. We have to be in a space of joy and excitement and wanting to share something good rather than alleviate the pain of something that's challenging.
Yeah, I'll add to that. We're actually in this space right now trying to figure out like how we've had many people say they want to help organize, which is wonderful. What we haven't figured out yet is how well, I don't even know that we're at the point of figuring it out. We have a volunteer recruitment event actually next week, and we have maybe 25 people signed up for it. So we're going to see how this goes. But so far, our idea is to make it really approachable and manageable. And for us, it's not like one single activity we're focused on. So this is it may be kind of a unique situation where we can do lots of different activities together. What do you want to lead? You know, we kind of have started out with, we want to have more frequent lunches, you know, because as remote workers, it's not like you have lunch with coworkers. So we started ourselves organizing lunches. And then as other people kind of came to those more regularly, we found a person who would be willing to lead a regular monthly lunch in her area. So like that started, and it's just one lunch a month, which is so manageable, you know, it's no big deal. It's like 20 people who show up to those. So we're kind of starting from there, like, what do you want to organize maybe once a month? Or you can get together with like 3 other people in the group who like to lead hikes, and like you each figure out how to lead once a month, you know, like have it just be so easy and not intimidating. I mean, if you have 3,000 people, I don't know what your events are like, you know, I don't think any of our people are thinking, oh yeah, I want to come organize a 170 person event from the get-go, you know, and we don't want anybody to do that because it takes time to like, you know, understand how to manage that well. But I feel in our group, like we get a lot of benefit out of just more frequent, small, manageable events, because it's just giving more people more frequent opportunities to connect in often more meaningful ways in those small kind of group environments. So that's kind of our approach at this point.
Yeah, this is a very large question. I feel like this could probably consume an hour-long talk.
Right.
I'll say that the first thing that comes up is there's often a disconnect between the organizer who's currently overwhelmed and what they want and or feel they need, and what the people volunteer are able to, willing, or want to do. And you got to remember that they're free workers. If they're just getting stressed out by this, it's probably detracting from their overall experience. They're not going to want to continue to be engaged. And so I'm going to say something that sounds really simple, but it's much more challenging. It's you got to identify and work with people's strengths if you want them to stick around. And that means you're probably not going to get what you need at all times, but you also need to kind of, like Darcy was talking about before, you need to be able to plan that you're going to have to, it's going to take you extra time to be able to have somebody take time off your hands. That's the reality of the situation, is you're going to have to accept that, and you're going to have to train, because if you just throw them in the deep end, they're going to run away, and probably not come back, and possibly do some damage to your group on their way out. So you have to help people help you. You have to let people feel good about providing help. You have to let them know that the help that you're getting has value, or they're appreciated, and it is a benefit. Because it could just feel like they're treading water and just trying to do something, wasting energy, and not actually contributing because you're too busy still being overwhelmed.
Yeah, those are really good points.
Mm-hmm.
We have one last question before I'll wrap us up from Larry. They ask, have you ever tried to motivate any non-pledgers within your group to make their first ever pledge? Maybe with some shout out incentive, just curious. Thanks, a truly great chat. So do you guys have any recommendations on how you've approached maybe folks who haven't donated into donating?
I have not done that because I really appreciate the voluntary nature of it. And I appreciate that, you know, my costs have been covered. I think if our costs were not covered, I would be more, I'd be more proactive about it, and I'd say, hey, this, we've got to like share the load here. But I have not, for me, it's worked so effectively that I haven't had to do that. So
I like to dispel the idea that there's too small of a donation, and let them know that I really appreciate them sending whatever it is, whether it's $1 or $2, just so I get value from that. It's nice to know that they got derived some value from what we're doing here, and those all add up if enough people do that. Because there tends to be this thing where people are like, well, I can't afford to give the $20 we were talking about before, so they just do nothing. And maybe $1 isn't gonna make a difference, but when I see the dollar, it certainly makes me feel good.
yeah.
Yeah. I think on our end, I don't know that we would ever take that approach, because it is voluntary and it's wonderful to get whatever people are willing to give. I think if we were to find ourselves in a situation where we did need to have more funds, I mean, and this is currently a path we're going to pursue anyway, is like sponsorships, find other ways to bring money in. And we probably go that route more than, try to get more out of people who haven't pledged yet. But I do love, what Gregory just said about calling out that any amount is welcome, because if we have, 100 people give $5, like that's significant, and if they're thinking in their mind it needs to be more, then yeah, they might not give. So I like that idea.
And I think this is also where the kind of campaign or specific ask comes in. If you have a thing that you need money for, or that you want to raise money for, asking for that can absolutely motivate people who may not even be necessarily showing up. Like, Greg, you mentioned that you've gotten money from people you haven't even met. And so, but they're motivated because they like what you're doing and they appreciate the connections that you're making. So I feel like that's a good route. If you feel like you're not getting enough in, or you want to inspire more people in your group to give, connect it to something real that they're going to get value out of.
Mm-hmm.
Excellent. Thank you all so much for joining us today. And thank you especially to Sarah, Darcy, and Gregory for sharing their experiences with us. I'd like to share a couple of slides before we go. So we have launched a Discord community for our meetup organizers. We will be able to meet fellow organizers around the world, get advice from mentor organizers who have years of experience managing groups on Meetup, and hear about our latest updates related to our Meetup features. So if you're interested in joining, you can scan this QR code that we have up on the screen. We also have a podcast, Keep Connected with Meetup CEO David Siegel. David talks with Meetup organizers as well as thought leaders in community and connection. You can scan this QR code to give it a listen. And last but not least, you'll be able to review a recap of this event in a few days on our Community Matters blog at meetup.com/blog. And thank you again, everyone, for joining us. And I hope you all have a great day.
Thank you, Ashley.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.